All right, so today we're going to go through a lap at the Catalunya National Circuit, and this is one of our students in the Keys to Speed program, and he asked me to review this lap and give him some specific feedback. And I thought, hey, let's make a video, and we can share it and help some others shave some time off their laps as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have his footage from his lap, and I'm also going to combine that with some aerial footage using Google Maps. And this is a really cool way to get like that bird's eye view of the track. So let's go and get his lap started here. And it looks like he's racing a ghost for one of his buddies and trying to beat him, so hopefully we'll help him do that. First thing I noticed right off the bat for this turn is some smoke coming off the brakes, and that might be a little more from the car up ahead, but you can see his brakes are locking up a little too. What I would suggest are actually two things for this entry into turn one. The first thing I would suggest is making sure the car is all the way over to the left side. The other thing I would also suggest is, I would say, make sure you have a good spot picked out along the edge. A lot of times you could use this little tower right here to mark the beginning of your braking point, or maybe if you have a much faster car with maybe not as good brakes, you'd say, okay, I want to be a few car lengths in front of that. You kind of would adjust that. We talk a lot about that in the Keys to Speed course, but get your reference points figured out and stay far left so you have as much room as possible and use the full track to get a wide arc through that first turn. Now, let me show you the path that we have going on here. He's kind of apexing a little through the middle, and he's coming out kind of in the middle of the track here. Now, let's go to the Google Maps view. So as you saw, this is the turn we're talking about right here. You want to start wide, and for this turn, you could take a few approaches. Maybe you could do like a slightly later apex, or maybe you clip close to here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Maybe you could clip here, or maybe you could do a double apex where you come in, you clip here, you go a little wide, and then you clip again and come out. That would let you have a little more speed coming out of the long straight, so you kind of like carry more speed in, hit an early apex, do a little more slowing down, then turn a little harder and come back for a double apex. The tricky thing for this turn is you actually have, if we go back, an elevation change. So you see this height change right there. So you got to be careful. You don't want to be doing too much turning at that point because you're going to have less traction. So long story short, for the entry, stay left, have your reference points, and then either do a double apex where you hit here, go wide, and then come back in again and hit here for the exit, or just kind of do a longer late apex. And the reason for that is I want you to be lined up on the edge for most of this part of the straight, so that you can then get a nice big arc through this sharper turn. Because if you look at this from the aerial view, it doesn't look as obvious when you're driving, but this is a much gentler curve. So if you can, lose a little speed on this first part of the chicane and almost treat this like a straight, you can pull, a lot more speed through the actual straight. So if you set yourself up right, kind of coming in a late apex on turn 2, you can just sail right through turn 3. Which is over here. What you'll see is kind of the opposite, where we have some slowing down. We're trying to quick get over to the right-hand side. And actually, he does a really good job of getting over, but the car is still pointed a little bit to the right. So if you can do a late apex out of turn 1, you could be kind of hugging this a little better, and you won't have to swing as wide and then as far back in. So it just makes this turn a little easier. And then you'll see that little shift right there. So you see the car going, it turns left. So this is actually a very early apex for this turn. I would definitely recommend, braking a little more and carrying it maybe to about here and then turning in, because again, that'll let you pretty much coast straight through turn 3. And maybe I can do a follow-up video where I actually show some of these things. But yeah, so this, did a pretty good job here on this turn. This is a tricky one because you have elevation changes. It's kind of a blind turn. The apex is up over the crest. So again, if you want to stay a little to the left, that'll help you get even more speed through the turn. And yeah, that's a pretty good apex right about there. So you could actually pull the car in a little bit to the right. And again, as we talk about in the Keys to Speed course, a big part of carrying speed through the turns is getting the largest radius you can, the largest arc you can through a turn. You actually can see, if you're looking at Google Maps, you want to get a good idea of a racing line to try, you can actually see the tire marks from the satellite view. So you can see people, they start out wide, the turn-in's about here, the apex is about here. See, again, this dark section right here. And then they go all the way out. Although, with a track like this, you have to be careful because you see there are 2 different paths. So let's jump back. Yeah, and he does a pretty good job there, getting pretty far wide. Now here's another chicane, and you can see there's a little bit of funny business going on at the end there, trying to keep everything on the track. And, this is another tricky one. I really love this track because it seems so simple, but there's a lot of little details to it. So you want to stay wide, and again, for a lot of these chicanes, you want to sacrifice the first one so that you get as much speed out of the second one. So I would recommend turning in a little bit later, hitting maybe about here, and then you're pretty much set to just fly right through turn 6 without too much steering effort. So again, what we see is actually, I guess, too much speed carried through. You want to slow down enough so that you can actually turn in and hit your mark, which actually you see his buddy over here. That's the strategy he uses. The apex is about here for the car up ahead, and he's just trying to keep it on the road at this point. We've all been there, so yeah, you'll see there's definitely some time lost going through turns 5 and 6. All right, here's another case where you want to make sure you have a good braking reference point. You can use this overhead banner or sign, or even, you wouldn't need to use this one because that's too far ahead, but maybe the shadow. If you always play the same video game, you can kind of cheat a little bit and have video game specific reference points. But I like to use things from the real track so that you can jump to different games and not have to relearn everything. So somewhere around the sign, you have your reference point to start braking. And this is another turn that actually confused me for a long time, because you want to enter the turn and maybe apex around here, and you see that apex like right around there, but that's about here on the map. But really, you want to be closer to the end. I mean, for a hairpin turn, you want to really start out wide, do a lot of braking, and then kind of boom, come straight out. So that would be my other suggestion here. Just do a later apex, start wide, and you'll have more speed coming out of the turn. Here it does a nice job, just kind of cutting through that little left right there, and you can see he does a nice job also with the throttle control and the braking. Actually, you could finish a little bit to the left here to track out a little wider and have a little more speed. But yeah, as I took note of his lap, really nice braking pressure. So you see he's not like maxing out. He's about 80%. He's following a pretty good line here. Now this is a tricky turn because you have a lot of speed coming down this hill. It's a little bit of a hill, and you're kind of getting towards the end of the lap and getting excited. But the trick is you really want to slow down here so that you can, again, lose some speed on the entry to this little chicane so that you have more speed coming out of it. and carrying too much speed, you know, you kind of have to do a little bit earlier apex, which then sets you up for a tough little kind of right-hander here. You know, so if we go back to the map, where are we here? So we went through that turn, we went up and around and around. We came down the straight here, and we're going through here. So he did a nice job with the braking and coming through. But I would just suggest braking a little more. And let's draw the ideal line. So the line that we saw was more kind of like this. You have to slow down and then kind of make it right again. If you do it right, you can kind of come in like you want to kind of brake hard right here, so that you can then take that late apex, and then you have a much broader curve. Whereas if you come in with an earlier apex, kind of make this correction like right here, like just when you want to be wide, you're kind of stuck being close to the inside of the turn, so you have to kind of brake hard, come back out left, and then kind of go back out this way, and then you don't really get to use the full width of the track. But you'll still be able to recover in time for the next turn. So, if you start wide, late apex for the entry turn, kind of sacrifice that turn a little bit, then you're in a really great position to finish strong for the lap through this last series of turns here. So let's jump back. So this is a great example of using the full width of the track. He has the throttle completely down. He's all out going into the straight, and he just hooks in, kisses the inside of the curb here. Maybe he could go a little bit more inside, but then he uses the full width of the track all the way to the out, hitting the curb a little bit. That's fine. And then, if you can do that for every turn, that's where the seriously fast laps come from. All right, so let's just review that one more time. It's kind of a longer video than I expected, but there's a lot of detail in this lap. So, one last time here. We want to look for our reference points, maybe this little tower right here. Stay wide as we brake. Maybe do an early apex, or he's actually set up for a late apex like his buddy here, so that you can come in straight and do a late apex again and just fly straight through this turn and gain a lot of speed. Then here we want to stay left, hit that hidden blind spot apex, use the full width of the track, and then here we want to make sure that we slow down enough so that we can hit a later apex again, maybe right about here, and then be set up to go straight through the turn. Then that'll let you basically be all out into this straight. Then find your braking point, your reference point, stay to the right. Do a later than you think apex on this turn. Every time it just tricks you. You can even see the tire marks here. You can use those to help you to find the line. That lets you have more speed coming out. And then he does a nice job here. You maybe clip that curb a little bit more. Good throttle control here, keeping everything on the road. Nice braking into this turn. And then all I would suggest is a little more braking like there, so that you could then, so you saw where he braked, it was maybe like a half second or less later. Just, it's funny, some of these things are just, a quarter of a second, a half a second difference will let you then take a much straighter path through this turn. Whereas instead he has to slow down here, and he's already on the inside and has to go wide and then go right again. But then he's situated nicely here. He hits that apex really well, uses the full track, and all out on the throttle. So there you go. Hopefully that's pretty helpful, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments.